Alex Sabat, I mean. You're here?
Hello. Yes, I did it.
Okay. So please start recording. Ștefan, you raise your hand. That is mean. Oh, okay. I see. Fine. Okay. So please, Alex, start recording, and we can start our webinar. Okay. So we are organizing now the first webinar in the framework of the ENFIELD project. Of course, we know that artificial intelligence is the biggest thing that happened in our society in the last years, and not only in the last years. And the ENFIELD project, in the framework of which we are organizing this project, is dedicated to respond to the challenges that AI poses to the society, to do research in this direction, and also to see about the possible problems or perils that AI can bring. And this is why we organize this seminar. Our first presentation will be delivered by Pankaj Pandey. He is the project manager of the ENFIELD project, European Lighthouse to Manifest Trustworthy and Green AI. And I'm going now to give the floor to Nicola, who is going to be the moderator of our first session until the break. So, Nicola, please take the floor.
Okay, thank you, Adina, for the introduction. So during this morning's session, we have 4 presentations. The first one by Pankaj, which would be an overview of the ENFIELD project. It will follow by 3 presentations dedicated to the ethical implications of AI. For the moment, Phillip is not there, so in this case we'll switch directly to Gabriel presentation. Gabriel, you are already there, so
no problem.
So thank you.
I want just to share my
your screen, please.
My screen.
Gabriel. So the first speak is by Pankaj. So maybe Pankaj, you can share your slides if you have any slides, or you can start to present the ENFIELD project.
Sure. Thank you, Nicholas, and thank you, Adina, for organizing this webinar. I think the topic of this webinar and the agenda is really interesting and helpful for our audience, hopefully. I have a question before I begin. I have been allocated a 30-minute slot. So is it all only for presentation or presentation plus Q&A both?
So we are already a little bit late.
Right.
So
no, I don't have a long presentation.
Yeah.
I just asked this to fill the time if you want to. So
I think we can go for presentations, and if Phillip do not come this morning, so we will have 20 more minutes for questions for all the different presentations.
Okay, thank you. So with this, I begin this presentation introducing the project ENFIELD. As Adina and Nicholas introduced, my name is Pankaj Pandey, and I'm a researcher at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology, and also the project manager for project ENFIELD. So ENFIELD is a project. ENFIELD is a project funded by the European Commission under the call European Network of AI Excellence Centers. So in this call, and specific topic is a human-centered and ethical development of digital and industrial technologies 2022. So the European Commission decided to fund certain network of excellence with the agenda of bringing together the various stakeholders from research, innovation, and the deployment side in order to make a European AI lighthouse. The objective here is to integrate the efforts of various stakeholders, and instead of them working in silos, it is the objective to bring them on together at the level of European level platform. In this project, we received about 11.5 million euros from the European Commission, and the total budget of this project is almost 12 million euros. This project consists of 30 partners coming from 18 countries, and which is a combination of industry and SME partners, as well as academic and research institutions. Now, this is the list of our project partners. All the 30 project partners are presented here through their logos. And as you can see, this webinar organizing team, UPB, is also here, and so are the other partners. And if you look at the description of this project is broadly divided into 4 pillars and 4 verticals. The pillars refer to the 4 foundational or fundamental research areas where ENFIELD researchers intend to investigate specific topics such as adaptive AI, green AI, human-centric AI, and trustworthy AI. So these are the 4 pillars, that is, as the name suggests. And then there are 4 verticals, that is the application areas, where we intend to apply the knowledge developed in this during the research on these 4 pillars to these 4 specific application areas. And the application areas are healthcare, energy, manufacturing, and space. So, and the combination of these 4 pillars and 4 verticals is a matrix format. It's not exactly depicted. It's not exactly the same as depicted here, but like I said, these different 4 pillars and 4 verticals, they coordinate and work together on different levels. And there are specific task leaders or work package leaders responsible for the specific pillars and verticals. For instance, the green AI pillar is being led by SINTEF, Norway. Adaptive AI being led by IMT, France. Human-centric AI being led by TUE, Netherlands. Trustworthy AI is the responsibility of NTNU. Likewise, on the vertical side, energy sector is being led by Polyme. Healthcare is being led by ICCS from Greece. Manufacturing is being led by Polyme, again from Italy, and space sector is being led by ECOE from Cyprus. Now, the interesting thing in this particular project is that this project is not limited to research or innovation activities within the ambit of it's not limited to the project partners, but we have opened the participation of other third-party researchers and SMEs and industries through 2 schemes, which are called as third-party exchange scheme and third-party innovation scheme. So the third-party exchange scheme is primarily for researchers up to the level of senior researcher, which is up to the level of associate professor in certain countries. And the objective of this scheme is to invite researchers from PhD, postdoc, assistant professor, and associate professor level individually or through their research group to cooperate and coordinate with ENFIELD project partners on specific challenges, that is the specific research topics. And through this scheme, we intend to fund almost 76 researchers, depending upon the duration of their specific projects. And the projects can range from 3 to 6 months. The total budget allocated for this scheme, the third-party exchange scheme, in short test, is 1.1 million euros. And each researcher participating in this project or cooperating on specific challenges will receive a grant of euro 2,400 per month. So if a researcher decides to work on this project for 6 months, that researcher will receive a grant of 2,400 per month for 6 months. And if it's a group application or a group cooperating with ENFIELD partners on a specific topic, then all the members of that group will receive the same amount. So far, we have had 2 test calls announced. We have concluded the test call 1, and the researchers have already started working on the specific challenges. And on this slide, you can see the specific pillars, corresponding project title or the challenges, name of the participants and the country they come from, and the host institution. In the last column, you can see the project duration for which they will be working with the specific host institutions and on the specific topics here. We also have concluded this, we invited the second, we announced the second test call up to 31st of October. We have closed it now. We have received this very good number of applications and we are currently reviewing it. So the list here on this slide is for test call 1. Test call 2 is under review. The applications are under review. Likewise, on the TIS call, that is the third party innovation scheme. This particular scheme is for research institutions, industry partners, or SMEs. And as the name suggests, it is for the applied research in AI, the innovation actions. And for this particular scheme also, we have received a grant of 1.1 million euros, and we intend to fund about 18 small projects. And each recipient or beneficiary can receive a grant of maximum 60,000 euros up to the 70% of their total cost. Now we concluded first call. I mean, we received very, very good number of applications. So in several hundreds, I won't be disclosing the exact number for now because the applications are still being reviewed. And we are in the process of finalizing the candidates. But in terms of the number of applications we can fund and the number of applications we received is proportionately very high. So this indicates the interest of various participants in this program. Now, in addition to these two schemes, TES and TIS, we do have several other opportunities for third-party participants, but those are not specifically funded through ENFIELD projects. And those two activities are summer schools and hackathons. So, UPB organized very first hackathon under the ENFIELD project in August. And again, we are happy to announce that hackathon also received a very good number of participants and appreciation. And it was very successful event. Likewise, we will be organizing a second hackathon, probably in the next year, somewhere around summer, so that we can have more participants. And at the same time, we intend to organize 2 summer schools. The venue and of course details will be announced as and when we have decided them, and those will be announced on our social media platforms as well as on the project website. So this is the introduction of Project ENFIELD, and I won't be taking much more time for the want of time. I mean, to cover for the delays. But since this particular webinar is on the ethics and trust, I have a small proposal to coin. And looking at the other panelists and their background, that some of them are coming from a philosophy and ethical field, I think if possible, we should be looking at specific challenges under TES scheme, where we can look at the ethical issues from a more philosophical and ethical points perspective. Because in this project so far, we have been looking at ethics from a more compliance perspective. That is, we are trying to comply with the specific ethical guidelines announced by the European Commission or specific industry sectors and so on and so forth. But there is a gap and scope for research on applying the specific ethical theories like virtue ethics or deontology or other domains or the moral luck aspects on specific application areas. For instance, moral luck perspective can be applied to the space applications in this project, or the virtue ethics can be looked into explore the ethical challenges or issues in the healthcare applications. So from a more philosophical perspective, we need to look at the possibility of collaborating with external researchers and participants. And with this proposal, I conclude this presentation, and I will be available for any questions and answers or any discussions you may like to have on these specific topics or on the project. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Pankaj, for the presentation. Is there any question? Okay, I see that Adina maybe has a question.
Yes, I would have a comment, let's say. Namely, I like very much Pankaj's idea that the next calls should also include an ethical part. What I would like to underline is the fact that one part of ethics is gender bias and data bias in general. And we are going to organize next year another webinar which is specifically targeted on data bias and how we can overcome this data bias. And I think that this subject would also be interesting to be covered in one of our test applications, because moreover we specified in the project that our research will also try to cover this data bias aspect. Thank you.
Thank you, Adina. I have a follow-up comment on your gender bias issue. So recently there was a news that one female CEO of a cosmetics company, along with her board members. She visited, I think, Microsoft, and there she tested their the tool, LLM tool, basically. And she asked the tool about who is the CEO and who are the board members of this particular organization. So the tool wrongly narrated that all the board members and CEO are male, despite the fact that this was changed long ago and it was a female who is heading that company, and most of the board members are females. So this was a very embarrassing situation. I think it was a visit to Microsoft. So, and then before this news article was published, reporters approached Microsoft for their comments. They said no comments, obviously, and that they are looking into it. So there are some inherent bias issues, even for the publicly available information. I'm highlighting this because this information on who is a CEO of a particular international organization is a publicly available information on web. Yet the tool made a guess that it is a male. So it's an example of biasness, I would say.
It's an example of bias of a large language model, I would say.
Exactly.
Any other question, remarks? Okay, if any, I have one, Pankaj. So you are at the heart of the project, both on the scientific part and the administrative part. Do you think that whether it is at the application step or during the implementation of the project, some part can be improved, some action or I don't know what, but is there any change that from your viewpoint can be very helpful in the implementation of the project?
One of the challenges we have noticed so far in the implementation side, and particularly related to specific verticals, is the IPR issues. Because when it comes to the application or implementation side, it is mostly the industry or SME partners who are leading these activities under the specific verticals. And some industry partners being so big, I mean, in terms of their size and economy and the project level, they have very tight IPR issues and confidentiality concerns. So those are the concerns which are kind of inhibiting some of the implementation activities. I hope we can resolve that, but it's one of the learnings for all of us that needs to be addressed and proactively considered when planning for such a large project. And normally I say that ENFIELD is not a 3 years project. It should ideally be a 6 years project based on the kind of KPIs we have committed for and the high ambition we have, but which is fine. I mean, since we have raised the bar so high, we will still be able to achieve a lot on that.
And I agree with you. IP issues are very, very tricky, and maybe, okay, you are an industrial partner, you want to go in a European public funded project. Okay, they may be a standard IP document. You agree with that, perfect. You go on with the project. You disagree, sorry. You don't you won't be part of the or something like that, because the discussion is so long and very difficult between all the industrial partners and also with academic partners in some cases.
Well, actually, I would avoid hard coding this kind of requirements in black and white. There are some gray areas as well, and I understand the concerns which our industry partners have raised, because it's not purely an IPR issue. It's an IPR / confidentiality / business trade secret, blah blah blah. So IPR can still be covered to a certain extent, but then there are confidentiality issues or security clearance issues likewise. So we cannot decide everything in black and white. So there are some gray areas which needs to be addressed as per the you can say best judgment of the consortium and the specific partner. So it's not a real blocking issue, but it's something which delays the process or the application. But
I agree. I've been a little bit too radical, I guess, but yes, some standard document with, you can discuss a little bit, but
Right.
Otherwise there are too much
There are too many
discussion,
moving
and
parts, you can say.
it's
Right.
I agree it inhibits, we lose a lot of time, but that's the same in the French public funding. So I think that's not related only with European project.
Right. Just because you mentioned French public funding, I remembered just another example. So Paris organized Olympics recently, and before that they announced a call for, something like artist call, innovation call for SMEs on specific use cases on the usage of AI for crowd monitoring, security, and all those activities during the Olympics event. And that had a project funded on the ethical side, but still there were several concerns raised by various academics and others on the ethical aspects of using those applications for crowd monitoring, security, and safety issues during the Olympics. So you can Google it, and maybe if you find something relevant, we can discuss that later on.
Okay, thank you, Pankaj, for the talk.
Thank you. Thank you.
Unfortunately, I think that Philip cannot join us this morning, so we can.
I'm not very sure if he's not going to join us, but he said that he has a meeting ending at 10 o'clock, so maybe the meeting was a little bit delayed. So I propose to go to the presentation of Gabriel and then to see if he's going
we can reschedule
yes,
presentation.
Thank you, Nicola.
Perfect.
So thank you for your invitation to give a presentation. I will share my slide. Just now, I'm just looking for my slide on my computer, which is, I'm sorry, a real mess, which is difficult to find it.
Until Jean-Gabriel is sharing the screen, I would like to thank him particularly very much because I know him from a long time, and he is an iconic figure in artificial intelligence. So it is for us an honor to have him here with us. Thank you, Jean-Gabriel.
Thank you for your presentation. So just, I don't understand what happened. Maybe here, no, here, no. Okay, maybe, okay. Oh, yes, I understand now. Yeah. So is it here? Maybe. Okay, maybe it's. Do you see something? Is it okay?
Not yet.
Not yet. I don't know what I can do because it's strange because I just. You see something? No?
Not yet. It seems that you have the credential to share. So from my side, it's okay.
It looks, because I see, okay, maybe here, but
do you have a share button on the right side of the screen?
Yes. I have a share button, and when I push it, it's so I have to choose a
window, a screen.
Window, which I'm doing. But when I try to share a screen, I have only one screen to share. And you see something? No?
Maybe you try to share the entire screen and then...
Yeah.
This is what I try to do. I tried all the solutions.
Maybe you need to press OK or share or something to confirm your choice of screen.
Okay, so what I will do, I will change my computer if
Okay,
so.
okay, no problem.
They just take.
Sometimes, yes, you
It's just me to
you haven't
open
get the permission, or if you have updated recently your
the
your
system.
computer, sometimes you have to.
So apparently Teams should incorporate some AI facilities to assist for these situations.
Yeah, an adaptive AI solution.
Because I know Teams is a good tool, but sometimes we also have a lot of problems with this application. It depends
Jean-Gabriel,
on-
did you
Yeah.
also try from the web app to share from the web app, from the web
This is
application?
from the web app. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Just sorry. Okay. Is it okay? Do you hear me?
Yeah.
I close my microphone, and here I try to.
So we see you twice, but
Yeah. I will close the other.
no,
Windows
don't worry for that. Yeah.
Just looking for my. I'm very sorry for this. Okay, it looks okay now. Now it seems. Oh, what happens? That's really strange because here okay, it seems okay. I don't understand why when I click on it disappears. It's really strange. Okay, and I cannot. Okay, I will try here. I suppose you see my windows.
Now we see your windows, the main windows. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
Is it okay?
So
thank you very much. I'm very sorry.
The floor is yours for 20 minutes.
20 minutes, okay, perfect. You hear me now? It's okay?
Perfect.
Okay, perfect. So thank you for your invitation to give this talk about the ethical implication of AI technologies in society. So here is a synoptic of my talk. There are 5 points. And I will begin, maybe it will surprise you, by 2 characters from mythology, because I think it summarizes the main issue in the ethics of technology. And then I will try to explain why there is a problem, ethical issue with AI technology, and what is the real problem, which is, I think, the origin of this issue. And I will try to give an idea, because I have only 20 minutes, of the solution that we shall try to use to solve this problem, even if it is a huge problem which cannot be very easily solved. So the first point is are these 2 characters from mythology. And before this, to introduce them, I would like to recall what is ethics. You know that the word ethics comes from etika in Greeks, which means customs, the uses, the morals in the society. And you know, in Latin, the word is different because it's morals, and that the etymology is the same. It comes from the uses of people in society, which correspond to morals. And what is ethics? It's the art or the science, it's a question of directing one conduct. And usually people and philosophers think that there are two sources at the origin of this art of conducting our behavior. One comes from experience, and I have to recall, maybe you know this, the etymology of ethos in Greeks. I mentioned it was related to custom, use of men in society, but it also means the stable, which is a place where the animals are going back each night. So it's related to the tradition. I think it's very, very important. But you have a second sources, which is not tradition, which is related to rationality. And you know that the ethics has been developed by philosophers, for instance, by Aristotle, who wrote many treatises about ethics, and many other philosophers in the time. And here is just the title of a book from a French philosopher, Henri Bergson, which point on the two sources of ethics, two sources of morality and religion, which are on the one hand experience, on the second rationality. And so it means that you have two kinds of approach, some approach which are related to tradition, some other which are related to precepts. But after the antiquity, after the Middle Age, some philosophers wanted to generalize and to have just some principles to formalize this notion of ethics. And the idea was to introduce two kinds of principles, some which are like law, we call them deontism, the fact that you want to reduce ethics to some norms. And here I give, and I will come back to a character which is Themis, the law. And the second, which is utilitarianism, the fact that you want to improve the system by doing some experiments. The idea is to relate to a second mythological figure. So here I recall what are these two figures. One is the Themis is the allegory of justice. And what is interesting is that she has two symbols, Themis. One is a balance, which is a sign of equity. A second is a blindfold as a sign of impartiality. She has the sight has to be closed. She is very important. And the second figure here is a prudence. You know, prudence is a mythological figure, and it's personally the virtue of prudence. What is important is that there are two symbols. One is a snake, which is a symbol of knowledge. She has to know a lot of things to be able to preclude some bad end. But the second, which is far more important for us, is the fact that she has a mirror. When she is looking in front of her, she has an eye. She looks the past experience, and we shall see that it's very important. So, one, Themis is a blind application of laws, and the second, prudence, is the anticipation and wisdom that are drawn from lesson of experience. This is very important. So, why is there a problem with AI technologies? So, on the one hand, you know all that we have many laudable application of artificial intelligence. This is the reason why we're working in this field, because we think that it's good for the humanities. And I give here some examples from health sciences, but you may have many other examples for other fields. For instance, in agriculture, there are many applications of AI, or in environmental science, there are also many applications of AI which help to improve our environment and to preclude the global warming, even if AI application contribute to this global warming. That here is the case in medicine. So you can process huge medical data to extract new knowledge. You can deal with biological knowledge, and especially to use big data to extract knowledge from all this data to design new drugs. And you remember, for instance, last few months you had a Nobel Prize which was given to some computer scientists, which helped to design new protein folding program. Extraction of knowledge from literature. You have many papers nowadays in medicine. It's possible to use, or robotics. I don't want to spend a lot of time, but just to say nowadays that even if AI can be very useful, you have many potential misuse of AI and machine learning. For instance, surveillance systems that could track move of everybody. You have heard about this notion of social credit in China, border surveillance in a different country, bias AI system we mentioned, and I didn't mention it's before, and the fact that it's lead to some discrimination, which is problematic, or the notion of public shaming of those who break rules, the notion of fake news, the fact that we can use a model to generate wrong information, and the fact that we can use AI to target some public to spread the information. So just you all know that you have many misuses of language generation. So for instance, chatbot can be, in a way, domestic spies, because you have your phone, you ask many questions, but can be interpreted by big tech companies, especially when this big tech company have nowadays close relation to big state, not only a company. Industrial destruction, misuses in education because the students are using text generation. So and this is what people call stochastic paradox. And you ever heard about paper mills, the fact that some scientists are using text generation technique to write paper, which is very problematic for journal bias, as I mentioned. And we mentioned also before environmental cost of learning, deepfakes, etc. And even in robotics, you have very positive use of robotics, but also you have more debatable use like autonomous weapons, sex bots, chat bots, fight bots, etc. The fact that you may have influence with this. So where does come this problem? What is the real problem here? And this is my second point, and this is my hypothesis. More maybe than 10, maybe roughly 20 years ago, in 2006, I was participating to a symposium in Stanford University, which name was, the acronym was very interesting. It was W5. What does it mean, W5? It means what went wrong and why workshop, lesson from AI research and application. And I remember at this time, in a small room, we had many people. And among these people, we had John McCarthy, Ed Feigenbaum, Carl Ehret, Doug Lennart, Manuel Veloso, Mike Pan, etc. Very big person in artificial intelligence attend to this meeting. And the question was why you have very good result in AI and why people are not using this system. An example which was given at this time was the example of electric elves, which were very useful. These were intelligent agents which were well designed and which could be very helpful for many people. But this is a story. It happened that one of these elves awake one day, its owner, at 3 a.m. for instance, to advise him that his 8 a.m. plane should have to be 2 hours delayed. So it's very strange. So it explains that this system was not in line with social use of this system, because you don't have to wake some person to say, oh yes, your plane is delayed. This is a very good example. You had many examples. Right? What is the question? Is that AI systems are not just technical systems, they are also social technical systems. It means that the usefulness of AI system is related to the society, to the organization where these systems are introduced. It's very, very important. In other words, technical systems are not only just machine, they cannot be considered in isolation, as for instance this marvelous Blaise Pascal computer. It's not sufficient, and to inspire confidence and trust. This is, I think, the subject of this conference. You need to add something. So why? Why? Because the machine make errors, and the first question is how to make they sound, how to be sure that the result of the AI system is conform to what we are waiting for. And so this is the first question. And the second question is that the machine transform our societies. Here is a reference to Aesopus stories, maybe heard about this. The idea is about the tongue. The tongue is the best thing and the worst thing in the world. And this is, I have no time here to recall what is this story, but I think it's very important with AI. It may be very useful for many things. It may change many disciplines in science. The new science are based on the use of AI to deal with enormous mass of data, but also you may have some bad use of AI. And one of the questions is how to restrict the use and how to anticipate and to preclude their misuse. So what is the solution? The first solution people are trying to give is to regulate. And many people say, oh yes, it's sufficient to have very good rules. Last 10 years, you had many, less than 10 years, last 8 years, you have many ethics committee which try to write some report and to make some recommendation. A paper published in 2022, 2 years ago, tried to count all the committees. There were 350 ethics committees, and they are writing many principles and recommendations. In 2022, there were at least 510 recommendations. And I think that most of us are engineers and or researchers, and you can be sure that when designing a system, you cannot have in mind all these recommendations because it will cut all your creativity. So this is a real problem. You have too many principles. And the second problem is that these principles are contradictory. For instance, privacy is in tension with the transparency. If you protect private data, so you cannot be transparent. Privacy is in tension with security, or maybe lack of discrimination. So I'm sure that all of us are against discrimination, but if you want to have an inclusive policy to include more women, for instance, you need to be discriminatory, because this is the definition of discrimination, that you need to favorize the woman, etc. So Europe tried to generate many regulation. You remember this old regulation, GDPR, but you had also, since December 2019, many other regulations, the DSAs, the DMA. I will not comment all this regulation, but you know that this regulation were not very efficient. The Data Act, which is very important, the AI Act, many of you know. So if you have some trouble to sleep at night, you can try to read them, because there are very long regulation. For instance, the AI Act has more than 382,000 characters, and it's very boring, and I'm sure that you will sleep. I would like to, I have no time, just to show. So in case of AI, it's based on this risk pyramid, and you have on the top the unacceptable risk, which are very problematic, and the minimal risk. What is interesting is you see the green area, minimal risk. They mention AI-enabled video games, and I'm sure it's not totally minimal, because it's very dangerous. It provokes some kind of addiction for our teenager. I think it's really problematic. Or maybe spam filter, which are, in a way are very dangerous. And I would like to know exactly what is inside these kinds. But in case of unacceptable risk, you have three unacceptable risks. The first is the manipulation of person through subliminal techniques. The problem is that the notion of subliminal techniques is very strange. You know, it's based on a fake. A publicist in 1957 said that when he introduced a message in movies by introducing some picture every 25th of second, then it was possible to convince people. For instance, if they say, drink Coca, eat popcorn, the rate of the number of people who buy popcorn and Coca was increased. But some people, some psychologists tried to reduce this experiment, and they didn't succeed. And they asked James Vicary its note of experiments, and he said that he never conducted this experiment. So it's a total fake. What is funny is that 70 years later, the European Commission reuses this notion. So the notion of social scoring, which is really frightening because it's the base of social credit in China, it is prohibited, and we understand. But you know, you have many situations where it's necessary to use social scoring. It's a case, for instance, in bank, where when you ask for credit, you have some score. And so what happened in this regulation, if you read it in detail, is the reason why it's so long, because you have many exceptions. You have general rule with some exception. One exception for the bank, when there are other exceptions for small-scale providers. But the only institution which cannot get exception are the state. So here is a very interesting example. You know, the driving license in almost all developed countries, you have what people call penalty point system. If you have, if you drive too fast, you have a radar with an AI system which take your immatriculation numbers, and we send you some. So this will be prohibited in the future. I'm not sure it will be the case, but just to see that all these regulations are very, very complex, and you have an other system. What I want to say is that all these regulations are too complex. I'm not sure that it will be possible to make them in practice. So I would like to end and to say now how to make machine virtuous and trustworthy. And I think it we have two problems. One is to make them more sound, to prove their soundness. The problem with AI, and especially with machine learning, is that it is based on induction. You know what is induction? Is the fact that you start from example and you generalize the lesson from example. But we know from a philosophical point of view that you never reach certainty when you do some induction. So how can we manage? And the only way to manage here is to try to test. So we reuse past experience and we try to ensure that the system is correct. And then, so we want to ensure that the past experience on which this induction is based cover all the possibility. And also you want to be sure that the system is stable. So you for instance, try to add some noise to the example to be sure that the result is the same. And also you want to use semantics. So you have a lot of work doing this. It's very important. But the second thing is to add some prescription to machine, for instance, to ensure that they respect they respect justice, they protect privacy, they preserve security, they be transparent, they preserve human autonomy, they have no bias, etc. It leads to two types of research. One is what people call ethic by design. So you introduce this prescription in the design of the system. And the second is to check the compliance in the system. This is exactly what we are doing in my team. We're working on what people call computational ethics. So then we want to be sure that the system is correct. So you know the first, which is the idea to make a system more sound, is in a way the reflection of this notion of prudence, the fact you remember with knowledge on the one hand and with the mirror, she's getting the lesson from past experience. When you are looking the future, you need to get an eye on the past. And the second is based on the notion of prescription, which is correspond to this allegory of Themis. So I hope that I summarize this ethical issue. But I would like to end, and this is my last slide, that ethics is not only prudence, it's not only virtue, it's also openness to what or who is coming. This is a difficulty with innovation. Innovation is novelty. Novelty is impossible to anticipate. And a great French philosopher, Jacques Derrida, pronounced a speech in the Sorbonne in 1994, 5 years after the end of the Iron Border. And he mentions the notion of chaos. The chaos is the mathematical theories of chaos, is a theory of unpredictable dynamic system. And what says Jacques Derrida is that the chaos is the form of all future. It's impossible to predict all the future. And this is the problem with the pyramid of risk. The risk is the anticipation of danger. But the problem is in case of technology, it's never possible to anticipate the danger. And we have very good experience, for instance, with a foundational model, because nobody imagined what could be the use of this model 2 or 3 years ago. So what is important from an ethical point of view, and Derrida summarized at the end of this paper, he make a false etymology which make chaos close to Kano. Kano is like this. When you don't know how to say, and he said ethics is in surprising situation, be able to face to this situation, not to be mutic, as this figure said. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Jean-Gabriel, for the presentation. I do not see Philip, I guess. So
No, I
what-
received now a message from Philip who said that he's sorry, but he thought all
he cannot?
the
Okay.
hours, no, he can, but he thought all the hours were UK.
Ah,
you know?
okay. Yeah, yeah.
So he's going to be available after 10:15 in UK. That means, so we go on with our presentation, and when Philip will join us, he will talk, okay? And he sent his apologies for messing the hours.
Okay. Some time different European times issue. Okay, so maybe a question. We have a little bit time. A question, a remark regarding Jean-Gabriel presentation? Yeah, so you can ask directly your question, Natalia.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Jean-Gabriel, for your presentation. I have just some thoughts and considerations regarding, since we are talking about the ethics and AI, and you've shown a lot of beautiful art pieces in your presentation created by the human hands. And as we know, today we have a lot of applications involving AI to create own art pieces. And I have just some thoughts, maybe not to reply today, but just to consider, because I think it is important to raise it today. Who owns the rights to the art piece created by the AI? And if we can consider this art piece as the original one. And then the next thing is whether in the future AI can replace the human artists. What are your thoughts about that regarding based on your experience? What do you think?
Thank you, Natalia, for your questions. That's a huge question. But my feeling is that, in fact, behind the machine, you always have women and men who are designing this. And I know a few artists who are using AI generative techniques to do some art. For instance, I had a lot of relation with Caroline Zeller. She's an artist. She's designing some very nice drawing with this. And it's a huge work. And in fact, even if you have a machine, you have some person. So everybody is able to use Midjourney to generate a picture, but it's an ugly picture and it's not very nice. But if you want really to do something which is an artistic masterpiece, you need to work a lot. And for instance, you have many people who are writing some novel with machine, that the result is not very good. But if you want to do something which is very new, so I think in a way AI can be considered as new kind of tools. And what will be remarkable among all this novel which will be written, this is something which is very particular. And so I think in a way, and I wrote something, I have no time to, about this change, this notion of art is evolving with technology. And so I have no time to explain, but just to summarize, you know, in the beginning of 20th century, and so it is a very big philosopher, Walter Benjamin, said with the photography, you have what he calls the disappearance of what people call the aura. The aura is the fact that attached to the masterpiece of art, you have the person of the artist which is behind. When you look at a painting in a museum, you'll see something like this. But after with the photography, it's totally different. You have not the aura because the person of the artist is not there. And I think with time, it's not, so the paper of Walter Benjamin was the status of a work of art at the time of reproduction, technical, mechanical reproduction of work of art. But today, it's not mechanical reproduction, mechanical production of work of art. And I think, and this is my hypothesis, that you have new aura which is attached to the fact that when you are looking something which is generated, you have in mind that you may have many other, an infinity of other masterpieces. So it's a very interesting question, and I have no time to explain in detail, but I totally agree with you. It's a very interesting point.
Thank you very much for your thoughts.
So, thank you, Gabriel, for this talk. It's time now to switch to the next presentation with Christof. Yes, who is
okay?
Yeah. So Christof, yeah, you can start to share your slides.
On it. Here we go.
Okay, perfect. So the floor is yours for 20 minutes.
Thank you. So perfect connection to the previous talk. Thank you very much once again, Jean-Gabriel, for your talk. I enjoyed it a lot. It's a similar topic, I would say, but it's more focused on current use cases and also a little bit more focused on Austria, which is the place where I'm also from. So yeah, let's get started. So I think it's safe to say that artificial intelligence holds the promise for transforming society for the better. So at least it holds the promise, right? So it's about streamlining maybe public services, improving healthcare, or even creating safer communities. But the question really is, what happens when good intentions meet flawed execution? And today I'd like to explore two cases where a public institution in Austria attempted to use AI for good and I would say maybe partly succeeded. So about me, I'm Christof Wolf-Brenner. I'm from Austria. I'm currently a PhD student of computer science, and also I study philosophy as a hobby, basically. And I work as a consultant for 8 years now at a research center, which is mainly concerned with AI, from conceptualizing use cases up until trustworthy AI, implementing it, deploying it, supporting it, etc. Even business models. So that's basically my background. And during my work, I came across, an attempted use case or two attempted use cases of AI conducted by the Austrian, basically job market services, so to say. It's called Arbeitsmarktservice Österreich, which is Austria's primary labor market institution. It operates affiliates at the federal level, state level, regional levels, even in cities, with headquarters in the state capital Vienna. It provides job placement services. It provides educational services, information, training, support for disabled people, etc. So there's everything. There's something in there for everyone who's looking for a job in Austria. That's basically the idea. So if you're jobless in Austria, you will get in contact with the EMS and you will work with them to get you back on track and to get back into a job. Basically the same as the job centers in Germany, which are really similar. It also collaborates with social partners, including the Chamber of Commerce and the Austrian Trade Union Federation, which is very important in Austria because you want to have a kind of a balance between employers and employees. So this is one of the mediating services that they also provide in terms of maybe even let's say getting up a contract, a frame contract for salaries in a branch or an industry. And currently it employs around 6,000 staff. And they're trying to reduce that because they have ongoing budget adjustments and they also want to reduce that, yeah. So that's basically the EMS. It's a job market services. It provides job market services for job seekers mainly, training, education, support, financial matters, and so on. It basically wants to get people back into the job. And with the current and latest technology trends, it also has found a rich ground to work on its goals, basically, which are and this is basically an alignment with their trend to rationalize services to get them more efficient, to make them cheaper at the end of the day. The second goal they're trying to achieve is, well, they want they have limited resources and they want to spend these resources well. They want to get the money where the potential is, basically. That's their idea of spending money. The third and last major goal that they have is they want to be objective. So they don't want to provide preferential treatment to people just because of personal reasons. They want to have an objective judgment that is then leading to support for people. That's what they want to achieve. Increased efficiency, effective allocation of resources, and objectivity. And their first idea that they had back in 2020, how to achieve that with algorithms, was the so-called AMS algorithm. And the idea was based on their rich trove of data that they have about job seekers. So they have basically data about everyone that went into contact with them, and this includes gender, age group, country group, so basically which country you're from. Either you're from Austria, you're from a EU country, or a third country. That's basically what they're categorizing you into. Whether you have a health impairment, whether you have support obligations, how long you've been unemployed, how often you've been in contact with the AMS, etc. So they have a rich assortment of data about job seekers that is updated every time you get back in contact with them, which is when you are looking for a new job, basically. And they thought, well, maybe we can use that to actually achieve some of our goals. And what they came up with is the AMS algorithm, which is basically taking all this data and then categorizing people into 3 groups which designate your chance of getting back into unsubsidized work within the next 6 months. So basically they're saying, well, we have this trough of people that are looking for jobs. Let's try to categorize them and find out which one of those people have a high, medium, and low chance to get back into an unsubsidized job. So basically saying the first group of people is those that have a larger than 66% chance of getting back into a job in the next 6 months. Then you have the people lower than 25%, so the lower bracket, so to say, and then you have basically the middle bracket from 25 to 66. And the idea is, let's take our historical data about job seekers and when they went back into a job and train an algorithm that then can determine for a new person to enter into the system in which category they might fall. So far, so good, but there's more. And more in the sense of consequences which are tied to you being in a group. So if you have a larger than 66% chance of getting back into the job market in the next 6 months in unsubsidized work, then you get little or no support. Why? Because you already have a high chance to get back in the job market, so you need no support. That's the argument of the AMS. Then there's the lower than 25% chance people to get back into a job, and they also get little or no support. Why? Because you have a very low chance to get back into work, and any money spent on you would basically be quote unquote wasted, my words, not theirs, because we will never bring you in a situation to get into a high chance of getting a job because you are so low basically on the scale. And then there's the middle ground basically, which gets full support because the argument is from the AMS, they just need a little support to then fall into the higher category and get back into a new job easily. So basically, full support to the people that are in the middle, no support to the top and the bottom because they don't need it or it isn't money well spent basically. And after the algorithm has determined in which class you would fall, you would of course have a human in the loop that would then determine whether this assessment is correct or not. And mind you, this is basically what the AMS is already doing without an algorithm beforehand. So it's what they're already doing before. It's just a more formalized version of this process, including an algorithm that is now supporting the decision. So that was their first idea of what they could do in 2020. And they built a prototype, and the first results went public, and people went nuts with criticism. So no stone left unturned about the concept and the white paper written about this. People went crazy and found all sorts of issues with that. Some well-founded, some not so well-founded. I'm here to present a few of those that really matter, I think, and that ultimately led to the decision to scrap the project completely. So first up, it reinforces social inequities, meaning that because you trained the system on historical data and because some things in the job market in the past were not perfect, you have now built system that will perpetuate these imperfections and project them into the future. So basically, if women were treated less equal than men on the job market in the past, then this system will reflect this inequity and project it into the future, which it actually did. So it actually did give women under equal circumstances lower chances of getting back into a job than men. Always. Blanket. That's basically what is falling under bias here, right? So basically, there are certain biases in the job market which were there in the past, and you are just training a system to basically project these biases into the future. Thirdly, lack of transparency. You didn't really know why you scored low on the scale. You could figure out systematically by comparing a lot of cases that some people were scored lower because of their gender, for instance, or because of disabilities. But if it said Christof Wolf-Brenner has a low chance of getting back into the job market, you couldn't really tell why, because the algorithm is designed in a way such that it was basically a gray box. It would technically have been possible to explain it, but pragmatically it wasn't really. And last but not least, there was actually no recoursing planned. So basically, if I got my result and it said, well, you have a low chance of getting back in the job market, there was nothing I could have done to overturn that decision. I couldn't have put in any documents or anything that would have stated that my chances might actually be better. That was basically it, right? So no recoursing planned. And this ultimately led to the project being scrapped, and we never talked about it again, basically, in Austria, right? So after it was scrapped, it completely left the stage of the media stage, basically, and we never talked about it again. So that was their first attempt. Sadly, they didn't talk about it anymore because, in my opinion, we could have built a great system out of that, or at least a helpful system out of that, simply by looking at the problems that it included and working on them a little bit more. Instead, I'd say that the AMS followed let's say, a US-American approach, which is get out your use case as quickly as possible to the public and then see what happens. But they weren't able to handle the backlash. So on the one hand side, the good idea is to get it out as quickly as possible, to have people talk about it, but on the other hand side, they weren't able to handle the backlash. But they didn't stop there. So the head of the AMS, which is ironically called Kopf, which means head in Austrian, or in German, didn't stop there, and he's somebody who likes to be innovative and likes to try out new things, and so he did, and they went ahead and built a second system which went live 2024, which is called the AMS Berufsinformat, basically a job information system based on a chatbot. And what it does is it gives you job and training information, provides quick AI-powered answers on professions, training options, salaries, career development. It is fed, or it uses data that are collected and put together by the AMS themselves. So it's using their internal sources, including their own job information system, and they've like a let's say a learning compass, so to say. Users can also customize it so it can work in different languages. It can go with more formal tones or more let's say colloquial tones and language, and it also has a feedback mechanism. So a few things done right here, right? And it went live in January 2024, and people tried it, and some liked it, but after a few weeks, people found out that there's actually quite a few issues with that. And the main issue I would like to talk about today is basically, I'll give you an example. If you were a 16-year-old male and you would ask it what line of work you should pursue, or it would recommend you pursue, it would basically say, well, you should be a mechanic. And if a 16-year-old female would go ahead and ask the same question under exactly the same circumstances, it would tell it basically you become a hairdresser, right? And that's what it did all the time. It suggested to women careers in healthcare, beauty, creativity, fashion, design, trade, and sales, I think, and men such as software developer, cook, retail clerk, restaurant specialist, cleaner, accountant. So it was basically giving biased answers based on gender. a lot. So under the same circumstances, under the exact same other attributes, it would basically make gender the main factor of the decision what you should go into. Of course, people also hated the system because it was very slow. It was based on ChatGPT, and it still is based on ChatGPT. Well, let's say the AMS doesn't have a budget that allows them to basically buy unlimited computing power and run it on a hardware that is basically making it go very, very quick for everybody. Still, it is rumored that the project cost them about 300,000 euros for the first version, which is basically very simple, run-of-the-mill chatbot based on ChatGPT. Then they had to redo the system. And what they did is they put in a lot of money and effort to basically, if you put in a question, it will try to determine whether this question might lead to a biased output. And if it is determined that it would lead to a biased output, it will then reformulate your question in a way that it would not lead to a biased output, and then forward your request to the language model. So basically, they have a classification in front that basically checks whether this would lead to a bad answer, simply speaking, and then rewrite your request so that it will not lead to a bad answer, or deny the request by saying this is not something that I can work with and answer to. So basically, they would change the input of yours or even change the output of the large language model to make it more palpable and to make it less biased. That's what it's doing now, and it's still online. You can use it. I will put the link in the slides afterwards. I've tried it with a couple of students, and the results were, I would say, not overwhelming. Some people find it interesting, especially if they ask about careers that they have no idea about, but you can clearly see this is aimed at a very young target audience that is they're trying basically to find new communication channels with people that they have no connection with, which are, of course, younger generations. What could they have done better? So first thing first, what they could have done better is they could have looked at bias mitigation in data. So they could have looked at their historical data and acknowledged that there is bias already in there, and work with data scientists to get some of this bias out, or at least acknowledge that it is there and show people who get results from the algorithm that there is bias in there. Secondly, they could have used transparent algorithms. So in the first example of the AMS algorithms, they clearly used an algorithm that is very easy to use, that requires little to no effort at all to use, but comes at a cost of of transparency. So they could have clearly invested more here and worked with their development teams to find an algorithm that allows them to give more transparent answers in terms of the classification. Which also would then lead to the third point. It would be better explainable to the people why they have a certain result, and they would be more understanding, and maybe even have a higher chance of accepting their classification or their answers. Even though we haven't heard anything good today about ethics boards, I am still of the opinion that this project could have benefited from an ethics board, not because there would be another body that would give them principles to work with, but to have a body that audits the results and looks at the use case regularly and gives feedback on the development that has been put into and the direction that the project is going. Because in this case, you can clearly see that they have been working in their own echo chamber, and the public then, as the first external entity, so to say, looking at this use case, didn't really like it at all. And they could have gone ahead and just asked a few people, a select group of testers, of external testers, what they thought about the project before going public. Another important point is feedback loops, user controls and feedback mechanisms. So especially with the first use case, the AMS algorithm, would have been great if there would have been a feedback mechanism or at least some way to recourse, meaning to give additional information to improve your result in a sense of make it more exact, make it more accurate, basically. And of course, they need to work on promoting equity in their outcomes, because simply suggesting mechanic to boys and hairdresser to girls doesn't cut it anymore nowadays. It needs to be more refined than that. It needs to take into consideration the life reality, so to say, of the people that it gives advice to, and maybe even go so far and just ask a few questions. So the chatbot should ask questions to give better results instead of just giving out results based on one line input that is, I'm 16 years old, what should I do? That is not enough of a question to give a good answer, and the chatbot should not react to that. But that's the problem of using ChatGPT or large language models. They are well trained on a lot of text, and they can give answers to everything that will sound great, but not be good in terms of content. Okay, that's it from my side. If there are any questions, I'm happy to hear them and also answer them, of course.
Okay, so thank you, Christof, for the talk and for the presentation of very badly driven AI project with a lot of ethical issues. Jean-Gabriel, yeah.
So thank you for this presentation. I was really interested because in France we have an organism which is very similar to the one we mentioned there, which is called France Travail. It was called Poland a few times ago, and they decided to have an ethics committee, and they asked me to be the chairman of this ethics committee. So I'm very interested in what you said. And we had a problem very similar to the one we mentioned, because they wanted to define what they call a score of employability. Exactly for the same reason, because they have an action from the government to help some people who are unemployed, and they wanted to say when they need to help them if their score for employability is very low, because then it could help to introduce them on the job market. And as an ethics committee, we had, and I would like you to comment this, and maybe in the future we could exchange on this, but our reaction was that this notion of score of employability was very reductionist, and the problem is that if you give this score of employability to people, it can be very problematic, because if the score is low, then they have no solution, and if it is high and if they are not employed, they can be depressed because they say, oh, why I have a very high score and I'm not employed. And then we tried to convince them that what was important from an ethical perspective was not just to give a score, but to explain how to act. And the idea was to have maybe different score which are related to different perspective which correspond to a possibility of action. For instance, the question of mobility is very important, because in some place, if you have no way to go from one place, it's very difficult for you to be employed, or maybe they need to be trained, etc., etc. And so the idea was to have a map with different dimensions with this. So what is your feeling about this?
So I think the worst possible way of doing this is probably the categorization. The next step that would be a little bit better is a score, because the categorization basically puts you into the groups and it doesn't factor in what the job market needs. If there is less demand on job market, you can have a lot of people in the high chance group and they still wouldn't get a job, right? If you have lower demand, there could be more people in the middle group and they would still get a job easily. So it doesn't factor in what the job market really needs currently. If you have a score, it is reductionist, but you could potentially factor in the current needs of the job market. So it would be better than a categorization. But still, I think you're I think you're completely right. It doesn't give you anything to do, right? It just gives you a blanket score or a blanket categorization, and that's it. And you cannot do anything with that. So having the different categories might improve the willingness of people to do something, might also give you input for your consultation talk, basically, to inform and recommend to the job seeker what they could do. With this, you cannot give any recommendation. You can just say, well, you have a medium score. That's it, right? So I think in terms of solution quality, categorization is worst, reductionist score second. Categorization is worst, so third, reductionist score second, and having categories with different metrics in between, I think, is the optimum. Plus, having a human explain it to you and give you recommendations on what to do. I think that's probably the way to go. So at the end of the day, you cannot get rid of talking with your consultant to get back into the market. It's just not possible to do this with a score and say, well, you are an A, so you don't need to worry, and that's it. That's not enough.
Okay. Vitor, we have time for a quick question before Jeriek presentation.
It's really just a short question or an idea, follow up exactly on what's just been said. Perhaps this scoring could be redone every week, and you'd still force the people at AMS to attend at least to one person in each of the unprivileged groups or unprivileged that week, so that you can still keep pushing people into the job market as is their job, basically.
Yeah.
That would be an idea to continue using such an algorithm. Thank you. I love the presentation.
So it didn't really state, the prototype did not explicitly state when and how often people would be recategorized, but the assumption is as soon as if you would be a new case, so to say, at the job institution, you would then be recategorized. So as soon as you become jobless and they know about it, they would recategorize you and not do it on a weekly basis. Because if you have a job, you don't really need the categorization. And the idea was, if you get jobless, they do this. One more quick addendum to that. The categorization is also the worst simply because you have maximum unfairness between the categories. So if you have a 24.99% chance of getting back into the job market, you are in the worst group. But if you would only 0.01% better, you would be in the middle group, right? So the seams between the classes are where the most unfairness is, basically, because you are just a little bit away from getting full support or just a little bit away to get a little support. So that's the worst place to be, actually. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Christof, again for the presentation and for the discussion. Now it's time to switch to Jeriek presentation. So would you please, stop to, share your screen, Christof, and Jeriek, if you have slides. Okay, perfect.
Yes.
So Jeriek, the floor is yours for 20 minutes.
Thank you so much, Nicholas. Yes, hi everyone. Great to be here and present to you some perspectives as a research scientist in Telenor working with responsible AI. And Telenor is a telecom company with presence in the Nordics and in Asia. And we've been looking a lot at EU legislation recently. This is the overview of all EU legislation in the digital sector, sorted by category, by research, data and privacy, intellectual property rights, cybersecurity. And there's one little box in red here, and that's the AI Act, which was the particular focus of my work in the past couple of years. And there's a lot of regulation in place now and coming for us. I think that's the main message in this figure. And in this landscape, sometimes it's easy to get lost, right? one might wonder, what would a telecom company have to do with the AI Act, even in principle? And the key is that if you look at most of the proposals, in fact, all of the drafts, the first line there is usually telecom, because the drafts were always proposed in the telecom work party in the parliament, where, of course, all sort of digital and IT regulations were brought forward historically, and this is also the reason why we have been really on the ball from the telecom side, looking at the AI Act proposals from the very start, actually, from as soon as the first drafts were laid out, and we had the many different versions, from the Slovenian presidency of the EU Council to the French presidency, the Spanish, the Belgian presidency. There's this 6-month rotating presidency, and then things get shaken around, new compromises are found, and basically we would come in and comment on various aspects of the proposed legislation from our industry association, GSMA Ethno. And some of the things that we looked at, one of the main things we looked at was the definition of AI in the AI Act, and that was a very important part of the AI Act, really, because it really shapes the scope of the legislation, right? And it was only fixed at the very end. Until very late in the process, we had this whole AI Act with 100+ articles and lots of specifications, and the whole scope of the legislation was still under massive discussion. There was no agreement at all on this. And the early versions of the proposal basically opened up the scope of the legislation very wide to include all kinds of machine learning systems, all kinds of logic, knowledge-based systems, such as expert systems, case-based reasoning, and those things, but also, and importantly, all sorts of statistical approaches, Bayesian approaches, and to the point that professors would look at this and say, in fact, this covers all forms of software, really. Your toothbrush is an AI system, according to some of the definitions of AI. And that is, of course, slightly worrisome from a company perspective, but also from an innovation perspective. If suddenly everything you are doing and everything you have done in the past gets classified as very risky, and you need to do a lot of paperwork in order to be in compliance with regulations. So that was a worry. And then only at the very end, a compromise was found, and the latest update of the OECD definition of AI was chosen. Now, let me just walk through quickly this definition. It says that an AI system is a machine-based system, and it says that basically it's the human who is setting the objective for the AI system, but the AI system itself has some degree of autonomy, has some freedom to determine how to go from input to output. So there is an inference step there in going from input to output. And that's very important, because it sort of distinguishes more basic statistical and traditional software approaches from what we more commonly as AI these days. So approaches where you have a large number of parameters, the weights in a neural network, for example, that you are optimizing, and that's the freedom of the AI system to find the best parameters and satisfy the objective set by the human, right? So lots of discussion on that definition. Other key issues were general purpose AI. So remember when ChatGPT hit the internet, and at that point this complicated things quite a bit, because the regulation was very much based on product safety, and in order to do that it was risk-based. So you assess the risk that your AI system poses, and then you regulate it appropriately. But then you come across these general purpose AI systems such as ChatGPT and other kinds of large language model based systems, which don't inherently pose a massive risk necessarily by themselves, but can be used in applications that do pose significant risk to fundamental rights. And that complicated the work quite a bit. There was a lot of discussion. Of course, the main large developers of these general purpose AI systems would argue that the onus is on the users of these systems to make sure that their applications are in line with the legislation. But then from the user perspective, you can argue that, well, we don't have any capacity to go through the billions of data entities that the models were trained on. We cannot evaluate all the toxicity in all of the training material and etc. So a good distribution of responsibilities across the value chain was a big fighting point for us and others in this legislation. So finally, a compromise was found that strikes some balance there, but it was not an easy road. Same thing with open source. Really, for a long time, there was no exception for open source, which would have made it very hard to use platforms like Hugging Face in the EU, for example. And that's still very important for innovation today. So lots of fights to go through before we got to the compromise that is now known as the AI Act. Far from perfect, but at least there is a solid piece of regulation out there. And one of the messages I want to send in this talk is that as researchers, we have an important role really to make AI more responsible by doing a number of concrete steps, by weighing in on regulation policy. For example, the EU Commission is regularly opening up for input from various stakeholders. Universities and research institutes are invited to give comments on, for example, the general purpose AI code of practice and all of these implementations, guidelines for AI that will come in the coming months. Another important thing we can do is to guide practices at our organization. So in the case of Telenor, I mean, I'm often asked what could possibly go wrong. What do you really need responsible AI for? And then I came up with a list of some things that I could see being a risk in the future. For example, as HR solutions start to incorporate AI, you can have detrimental effects of biases. You can have discrimination in automated personal offer systems, and you can risk fundamental rights with automating performance management, and all of these things can easily be implemented without too much awareness of these issues. So it's important to inform about potential risks there. And unfortunately, despite a lot of work on the AI Act, my conclusion is that the AI Act will not magically save us. There's a lot of stupid things that are possible and legal to do. And I completely see that the AI Act forbids a couple of high-risk use cases, a couple of use cases with completely unacceptable risks, such as social scoring and manipulation, use cases related to facial recognition. But most of the legislation is about high-risk applications. And when it comes to that, a lot of what is in the AI Act is really due diligence that one should do. One should perform risk assessments beforehand for use cases, for example, in affecting the safety of critical components in critical digital infrastructure, and this is something we would have done anyway, right? So there's not that much surprise that this is necessary. And the thing at the organizational level, we need to go beyond this AI Act regulation, right? And for that, we started by outlining some principles for responsible AI based on studies of what others have been doing and what the recommendations from other international institutes are. And we came up with these themes, and then we also specified what they mean to us in particular. For example, what does transparency and explainability mean for us concretely, and what sort of applications does this become important? So we outlined that, and we are working with the organization at large to incorporate that in our processes. So this was an effort with an interdisciplinary team. So we had AI research, we had social scientists, we had security professionals and compliance legal experts working together with us on that. And finally, a couple of words on the other way of making AI more responsible by doing actual AI research in more responsible directions. And this is where really the ENFIELD project comes in for us, because as Telenor, we are participating in the Green AI, Human-Centric AI, and Trustworthy AI pillars, and working together with a number of consortium partners on some of these projects in these pillars. So we're working on a review of green AI, environmental benefits and harms of AI. We are looking into how to measure AI sustainability for some particular applications, such as speech recognition. And we are working on a number of user trust related projects, in particular a survey of our employees' current practices with AI and perceptions, attitudes towards AI. And a few words about this background for that is that, when we look at how trust is defined in the literature, often this old definition from Meyer is brought up, and it outlines three key components in organizational trust for a person or a system you are trusting, and those are the ability of the system, benevolence of the system, and integrity of the system or of the trustee, the person you trust. And we are looking into how can this be translated to AI systems. And literature found that there are a couple of key factors influencing user trust, broadly three categories: socioethical considerations such as fairness, data protection, and technical and design features related to, for example, explainability and reliability of the system. And then a big category is also user characteristics. So prior training and whether users were involved in developing the solutions. These affect user trust. And of course, we are interested in enhancing the AI adoption at our company. So we want to find targeted strategies to address these key factors influencing the trust. We also want to do some follow-up work when it comes to explainability, because there is a gap in literature on explainability in meaningful, decision-making tasks in corporate environments, often with not just a random population of people surveyed on the internet, but actual technical users. And one domain where this would be of interest for us is reinforcement learning for network energy optimization, where we've been doing some experiments with using reinforcement learning agents to save energy in our network. And you see here a number of users, mobile users, moving in a network with 3 base stations, where we are adjusting the power, where the reinforcement learning agent is really adjusting the power of the base stations in such a way that its objectives are to minimize the total energy consumption while also keeping the quality of service for the users. And we are taking this further these days with Ericsson, who are actually implementing a similar but more advanced algorithm in actual equipment these days. So that is a concrete machine learning example where explainability would be very useful and helpful to increase the trustworthiness. So let me close there, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Jeriek, for the talk. Is there any question, remark? So just raise the hand. If no question, I have one. So how does these requirements are perceived at Telenor by your colleagues? Do they think that's boring stuff, additional boring stuff in the process, or a way to improve the services, or?
Right. Yes. Yeah. This is a good question, and of course, any additional requirements, any additional paperwork are seen with some skepticism. That is completely natural. But when we explain the purposes, it also becomes clear that there is an enabling effect by having clarity on a number of these issues, because people have lots of questions when it comes to AI. Are we allowed to use this? What are the risks when we upload documents and online? And it becomes clear that it is very helpful as well for colleagues to understand the potential problems and a framework for what we are able to do within the company and what risks we need to be aware of. Yeah.
Okay. And do you have an ethical committee at Telenor, or that's yeah?
Yeah. So we have a number of different sort of structures for these sort of questions. So we have an AI board, and then we have from the board of directors, there is a technology and committee, and we have a human rights forum where we actually invite human rights experts who work for the UN, the EU, and other institutes to comment on our work with AI regulation, AI governance, as well as any other open topics. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Alexandru? Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much for the talk, Jeriek. I wanted to pose a question related to your remark that that you find that the AI Act is less binding or less stringent, let's say, in terms of the regulation it imposes for certain types of applications, with the exception of the ones that you called high-risk applications, where some regulation is clearly stated. The others are, let's say, left more open in terms of just maybe guidances and so on. As far as I remember, at one point before the Act was adopted, one point of discussion was that if you over-regulate for any kind of application domain, this would stifle development in some sense. So the question would then become, do you think, in your opinion, where should the focus of, let's say, acting on a regulation fall? On the developer side, on the AI development side, or on the AI usage side? You were mentioning, for example, the practices that you have in place at Telenor, where colleagues ask you what could happen if you use AI in this and this, and it's basically a usage of AI in some business domain, let's say, of a company. So should the regulation accent be more on the usage side or on the development side, such that nothing bad can happen if you use it? What's your opinion on this?
Yeah. Great question. And this was, of course, the topic of a big debate when the AI Act was being developed. And I think my position is you can't choose between doing either, but you need to do both, and you need to have a sensible distribution of the responsibilities along the value chain. So between the developers and the users, and there might be some links in between there. So the AI Act also defines roles such as importers, and but we don't need to go into the detail of that. But I think it's very important that everyone who has a role there, every stakeholder has clarity on their level of accountability and what risks they are responsible for mitigating, right? So as a developer, you need to keep track of your training materials, make sure that there's no copyright violations, keep track of biases in the training documents, have some analysis of that, and as a user, you have, of course, a responsibility for integrating the AI system in a responsible way, in the sense that if the application you are developing is by itself a high-risk application, then you will face additional scrutiny, right? So I think my answer is that there needs to be a sensible between the responsibilities, and everyone needs to have clarity on their role. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So, thank you for the answers, and thank you for the talk, Jeriek. We reached the end of the early morning session, I think, and now it's time for a small break, 10 minutes break. So thank you again to all speakers and also to the audience.
Thank you, Nicola.
Thank you, Nicola.
Thank you. We shall resume in 10 minutes.
To start the
yes,
recording.
Yes. We are going to record this presentation. Thank you.
So our next speaker is Asbjørn Følstad. He is a researcher at SINTEF, and his research interests include human AI interactions, chatbots, and conversational AI. So please, your floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you so much.
and it's good to be here. It's been good to be listening to the other presentations, and it's going to be great to tell you a bit about this from the perspective of a project where I'm a part of the Themis 5.0 project. The title of my talk is Ethics and Trust from a Human-Centered Perspective. And as you said, I'm Asbjørn Følstad. I have been researching in particular trust and trustworthiness of digital systems in general and AI systems in particular, and for AI systems very much so with conversational AI and chatbots, and that will also be evident in parts of this presentation. The Themis project, just a few words on that. Themis is a research and innovation action in response to the call on the human-centered and ethical development of digital industrial societies. And Themis is about human-centered trustworthiness optimization in what we call hybrid decision-making support, meaning decision-making where both humans and AI support is part of doing decision-making. And this is in wide, relatively different areas in Themis, spanning from news journalism and to medical or healthcare, and to port management and maritime operations. And the aim of the project is to provide a framework and a platform to enable optimization of trustworthiness. It's quite an ambitious goal. We're 16 partners and associates across Europe, led by Maggioli, and Sintef is one of the research partners. I'll not say much more about that. The Themis project concerning optimizing and assessing trustworthiness is all about balance, and balance is something that I will keep coming back to in this presentation. This is the project logo, but it's with the balancing scales that also the first speaker today was focusing on, and I think this art of balancing between different perspectives, between different sets of requirements, between different obligations and different needs is an important part of trust and ethics in the context of AI. AI ethics and trust, they have really emerged as key issues. And this is, of course, because of AI is becoming increasingly advanced and increasingly taken up in society. However, it is sort of surprising that ethics and trust has this main focus, or this high visibility or high interest in with regards to AI, as other technology developments may not have had the same focus on these perspectives. One example that is often mentioned is the development of social media, some over the last 20-30 years, where ethics hasn't really been part of the discussion until later on, whereas for AI, ethics has been with us from the very start of this most recent wave of AI. And this we can see Also in the image here, it's a citation report from Web of Science showing scientific works that treat both ethics and artificial intelligence, and no surprise since going 5, 6, 7 years back, there is like a hockey stick curve of increased interest in this topic. And coming from the Themis project, but also seeing the field in general, trustworthy AI has emerged as a key to meeting these ethical requirements and to establish a sound basis for trust in AI. So trustworthy AI is in many ways the means or the way to design AI systems so that ethics and trust should be taken care of. Almost like this. So trustworthy AI, as long as we have trustworthy AI, then we will also both have trust ensured and ethical requirements adhered to. And it is, but the question, of course, then is, well, is handling trust, handling ethics, are they really two parts of the same thing? Is trustworthy AI covering both? And how really to have these terms relate to each other? And it's not always clear how they relate. For example, whether trust or ethics is overlapping, partially overlapping, whether ethics and trustworthy AI is overlapping or partially overlapping. One way to look at it, at least when it comes to trust and ethics, could perhaps be to see that, well, for users and in terms of AI, there's a clear distinguishing between what we can call concrete short-term goals on the one hand and broader long-term implications on the other. Short-term goals is typically that you make use of an AI system, perhaps ChatGPT, to help you with some immediate issue. For example, finding out information about something, shortening a piece of text, something like that, a short-term goal. And for such short-term goals, it seems like trust is very important. And the ability of the AI to help you with these short-term goals, to actually deliver on what you want it to do, is highly important for trust. We see that in conversational AI a lot. If a conversational AI or a chatbot is able to help you, able to solve your problem, you are more likely to trust it. If it doesn't help you, you're less likely to trust it. Other aspects of trustworthiness is of course relevant, but trust is very much dependent on short-term goal achievement, whereas ethics perhaps have this longer, broader set of implications where it's more the societal good, the good for the individual in the long term, and so forth. And this also requires some balancing. Another clarification to be made is that between that of trust and trustworthiness. So whereas trust in AI is in many ways in the eye of the beholder, and trustworthiness is the characteristic of the AI system. So that when I am a user of an AI system, again, for example, ChatGPT or any other system, but ChatGPT seems to be the AI system that most people have a tendency to use these days. Trust is something that I do in the system, depending on my expectations to the system and my willingness to expose myself for risk with regards to what the system can deliver. And trustworthiness are the system characteristics that may or may not support my trust. So the system can be accurate, and I can trust it to be accurate, for example. And beneficial use of AI, it depends not necessarily on trust, but it depends on an adequate configuration of trust to the actual trustworthiness of the AI system. So from a human-centered perspective, aligning trust and trustworthiness concerns configuring trust to actually fit or match the trustworthiness of the AI system. And what happens if these trust and trustworthiness are not well aligned can be seen in stories of people blamishing themselves using AI systems for things they shouldn't do. One story that went around the world like wildfire was the so-called ChatGPT lawyer, an American lawyer called Stephen Schwartz, using ChatGPT to prepare legal case processing documents for him, and not being aware that ChatGPT was likely to include references to made-up cases. And this is the picture of Mr. Schwartz when he leaves court after having explained this issue, looking as devastated as he likely felt. So again, balancing trust and trustworthiness is key. And trustworthy AI, the way to get ethical and trusted use of AI is addressed through detectable trustworthiness characteristics. That is, characteristics on which adherence to ethical requirements can be assessed. And to exemplify these sort of trustworthiness characteristics, what they may be, we again fall back to ChatGPT as an example, as this is a so much used AI system for users these days. So, for example, if I ask ChatGPT as a user, tell me about ENFIELD, the European Lighthouse project on trustworthy AI and trustworthy and green AI, I get an answer. And the most important thing for me, for my short-term goal of using ChatGPT and to trust this use, will be its accuracy. Accuracy is key and key aspect of trustworthy AI in this specific situation. And it turns out that accuracy is key to very many use cases. But accuracy is not all that is to trustworthy AI. Another important aspect of trustworthy AI concerns how the AI system found what, or how the output became what the way it did. And transparency in output, or transparency in model, or transparency in the data going into it, is a way to ensure trustworthiness. I can ask ChatGPT to give me a detailed persona description of a typical user of the ENFIELD solutions, and you might guess now that what I'm looking at is the trustworthiness characteristic of diversity and fairness. Fairness is often mentioned as an important trustworthiness characteristic on a system level, and often by system owners, ensuring that systems serve their different user types in a good way. Another important trustworthiness characteristic, safety, can be illustrated by asking ChatGPT to do something that it shouldn't. For example, asking it to sabotage this online workshop where safety guards are in place. It can concern privacy, where measures are taken in order for person information not to be revealed, and of course accountability, what happens in the case things go wrong and doesn't work out as it should. Ethics and trustworthiness is a balancing act, as said, and it is in part conceptual balancing, in part balancing contextual aspects. I'll now first go into conceptual balancing. To achieve trustworthy AI, it's a need to balance the different approaches and frameworks available. As mentioned by the first speaker today, there is a broad range of ethical guidelines available, like in this overview provided by Thilo Hagendorf, you're not able to read all that is here, but what you see is a matrix of the different ethical requirements or ethical guidelines posed by different broad ethical guideline summaries by, for example, the European high-level expert group, by the US administration, by OECD, and so forth. And as you see, these are partly overlapping. These are very broad and very varied, and it's important to balance them. It's also important to balance in terms of what kind of frameworks you may make use of. In the Themis project, we aim to balance in part the European perspective on trustworthy AI reflected in the high-level expert group on AI, focusing on human agency, robustness and safety and so forth. But we also make use of the more technically oriented framework from the US National Institute of Standards and Technologies, which is more aligned to or focused on technical aspects such as the validity and reliability and of the system. So from a European perspective, a framework might focus more on human agency and also well-being from a societal and environmental perspective, whereas a US perspective on the NIST AI framework for trustworthy AI, it's a more focus on the technical aspects, and these needs to be balanced. But it's also a contextual balancing. To ensure a trustworthy AI, the specifics of a context and a situation might be determining for which ethical requirements to prioritize and how these are set up. For example, in a context of high goal orientation, accuracy might be very important. But if I, as a user, use ChatGPT for a different purpose, for example, asking it to brainstorm with me on a specific topic, accuracy becomes less relevant and other aspects becomes more relevant for whether or not I trust to use it for this specific purpose. It depends on the context, it depends on the situation. In Themis, we therefore set up our framework and platform for human-centered trustworthiness assessment and optimization in a way that different use cases are addressed in different manners. We have the use cases of news media, of the maritime sector, and of the healthcare. And if we just consider the concept of fairness, one of the trustworthy AI concepts that are important in very many use cases, we see that this is different for the different use cases. So fairness in news media might be to treat different viewpoints or political preferences equally. In the maritime sectors where you optimize port operations, it might be to treat different operators equally, whereas in healthcare, fairness might be to treat different demographic groups equally. I will spend my final couple of minutes to take you through our Themis approach to human-centered optimization and assessment of trustworthy AI, and in a way that is our approach to doing this balancing act of identifying and configuring the trustworthiness characteristics that determine the trustworthiness of an AI system. We take a starting point in the AI system as part of the socio-technical environment with its specific users, and on this basis identify which trustworthiness characteristics from different perspectives, technical perspective, ethical, legal perspective, the business perspective, that are important for this specific context. And then make this input to a risk management procedure where the different risks to trustworthiness characteristics can be assessed and balanced. All this with input from users and domain experts, both in terms of identifying the trustworthiness characteristics on which we are to assess and operate and optimize, but also to ensure that these trustworthiness characteristics are presented in a way that are understandable or that serve as explanations for users and domain experts. And the output then of these trustworthiness optimization of process through risk management is then fed back into the AI system for improvement. That was ethics, trust, and trustworthy AI from the perspective of the Themis project. In conclusion, what you can take away from this is, of course, that AI ethics and trust have high attention in society and academia alike, and trustworthy AI concerns meeting ethical requirements and establishing a sound basis for trust in AI. Ethical requirements and corresponding trustworthiness characteristics, they depend highly on the use case, and in order to make or identify which trustworthiness characteristics that are important and how to configure these relative to each other, a human-centered approach is needed to assess and optimize AI trustworthiness. And that was it from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. If you have any question, please raise a hand. So, yes, Adina, please.
Okay, so I would have a question. How is related to the last slide? How is going together optimization and trustworthy? Because sometimes in order to ensure trustworthiness, you have to do some extra operations, and therefore how is it combining with optimal AI?
Yes, so this is a very good point because as you say, optimization of different trustworthiness characteristics may go at the cost of each other. For example, requirements in terms of transparency may come at the cost of efficiency in the AI system and so forth, and may in turn have implications, for example, for accuracy. I believe that the way this is the way we handle this in Themis is productive in the sense that the technical performance of the system is accounted for in the trustworthiness optimization process, meaning that trustworthiness is not assessed and optimized as something distinct from AI system performance, but AI system performance is part of that optimization process, so that means that in the same assessment where we assess a more sort of classical ethical aspect such as fairness, there will also be assessments of accuracy and robustness of the model or system. So yes, trustworthiness may indeed change what an optimal configuration of the AI system may look like, but that should be then handled in the risk management process in Themis, because both this performance in terms of accuracy and robustness is taken account for alongside with other requirements or characteristics of trustworthy AI.
Thank you. Any other questions? If no, then we can move to our next speaker, Professor Dr. Engineering Ștefan Trăușan-Matu. And
sorry, Christina.
Yes.
I'm sorry. So I talked to Professor Trăușan, and he agreed to have the next presentation of Professor Morgan. Sorry to because Professor Morgan joined us and he
Yes.
is now available. And Professor Trăușan-Matu agreed that he will do the presentation afterwards.
Mhm.
Okay?
Okay, now that means that now we will have Professor Phillip Morgan, and basically the floor is yours.
I'm going to, yes, record it has started.
Okay, I see that the recording also started. So first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to have this presentation. I'm a professor at the National University of Science and Technology, Polytechnic Bucharest. I'm the chief of Natural Language Processing Laboratory. In this hub, we are also will also be involved with the laboratory which I'm conducting. We have many teaching and research staff, including PhD students. We had also many former PhD students. Here in the image you have several of the actual members, main members, not all of them. I hope you see me, yes, and you see my slides. It's okay?
Yes, we can see your slides. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I will discuss about ethics and trust from the perspective of natural language processing and the perspective of a computer scientist, of an engineer, of a researcher and developer of applications in natural language processing. There are many such applications. Probably the majority knows, I'm sure that maybe all of you know about ChatGPT, but in recent 2 years after the ChatGPT, many others similar systems were developed, like Gemini, Windows Copilot, Claude, Llama, and others. But previously there were conversation agents which are still used, and also probably you know very well, Siri, Cortana, Alexa, and so on. Machine translation, it's also another application like Google Translate, which probably all we used for many years. But also narrative generation and, for example, generating news. And in fact, it's a bad thing that also fake news can be generated automatically. But fortunately, also using natural language processing, such fake news can be detected or other kinds of bad usage of NLP, like manipulation, propaganda, cyberbullying. So all of this bad text which can be generated by artificial intelligence, by natural language processing, but also written by humans. Other applications, very important, are opinion mining, sentiment analysis, summarization, knowledge extraction, and computer-assisted learning. There are problems. Some of them were already discussed by the previous presenters, like bias, conversational agents with unethical utterances, building user profiles and usage of them in unethical purpose. For example, it was also mentioned, I think, by Gabriel, if I'm not remembering that, AI spies, as I said, generation of fake news, and problems of trust, like also ethics. It's of course a problem of so if we should we have trust in what AI and natural language processing generates. If they are not ethical, so you cannot trust to use. But also hallucinations, jailbreaking, and explainability. If about explainability, it was also discussed. I will focus later on hallucinations and jailbreaking. In artificial intelligence, there are two main approaches. Now everybody knows about ChatGPT, deep neural networks, deep learning, and so on. Even I saw some, I had to review a PhD thesis, and that PhD student wrote that artificial intelligence is only connection, it's only with neural networks. No, there were for many decades symbolic artificial intelligence, which is still needed and used, for example, in combining neural networks with knowledge graphs or with rules and logic. And I'm emphasizing this because, for example, for assuring ethical answers, ethical utterance replies, there are some approaches of using logic or mathematical logic or rules. For example, for ethics, there are deontic logic, which can be used, but also some other such approaches. The well-known system, everybody, it's of course ChatGPT, which is, as I said, let's say like a prototype of the others, like Gemini, Llama, and so on. In fact, what is ChatGPT? It's in a few words, if you probably many of you know, it is based on a so-called large language model. That means a model of human language, which was constructed with a deep neural network called a transformer, which was trained on a huge number of texts. Here on upper right part, it is this training process where text, and I will see immediately what text were transformed in vectors of numbers, so-called word embeddings, which reflect, so two vectors are closed in a vectorial space if they are semantically closed. And this data set, this huge amount of text was used to train a huge neural network, which after it was trained, it was a process of so-called reinforcement training with, it was a reinforcement learning with human feedback. So for several months, it was a number of people who used the ChatGPT before it was made public for tailoring wrong, unethical answers. And after that, this large language model, which in fact is this neural network, is now used for generating text. And you see here from a prompt written by a human, this text is tokenized and transformed also in vector representation, also word embeddings. And in fact, what does ChatGPT? It's for a given text, it generates the most probable next word. So it's in fact a statistical approach. And as also Gabriel said, it's like a stochastic parrot. In fact, it's a famous paper discussing about this dimension of large language models. So it learned what was written, what text it was found in a digital format, and it can generate the most probable word for a given sequence. And I'm emphasizing this because, of course, it's very important from our point of view, ethical and trust, because it does not have moral explicit rules or other such ways of tailoring the answers to be ethical and trustworthy. There are approaches which add some rules to such systems to tailor the answers. So ChatGPT, in fact, as I said, has a neural network behind, which is a huge, it has 100 billion, maybe more, this is for the first version, neurons, artificial, of course, neurons, over 100 layers and 100 trillion synapses. In fact, it is, if we compare to human brain, which has 100 billion neurons, it is similar, but the human brain has also some other things in addition, like glial cells and some others. I will not enter into details. But anyway, ChatGPT and the others act similarly to human brain. As I said, it was trained on a huge data set. You see here, the majority was obtained by web crawling over 8 years, and some others from data sets, corpora of books, and some other such. Even if it is so performant, there are limitations, and these limitations were emphasized also by the OpenAI, which developed ChatGPT. And for example, 1 year ago, when they developed GPT-4, they in their report, they and I have here a quote. They even said that it suffered from hallucinations, limited context window, not learn from experience, has problems of bias, overreliance, and so on and so on. So here I summarized some main problems of ChatGPT and of course similar systems. Ethics, it was discussed here about bias. I will also briefly discuss. But some other problems, hallucinations, jailbreaking, limited learning, explainability. Explainability, in fact, is a big problem not only of ChatGPT, of these approaches based on deep neural networks or other machine learning algorithms, which behave like a black box, and it's a problem if you ask to give explanation. Of course, there is a lot of research, and there are some approaches like some systems like Lime, Sharp, and so on, which can give some explanation, but the problem is not totally solved. In fact, they don't have a real understanding of such systems or inferencing. As I said, they are like a parrot, which can, of course, on a totally other dimension parrot, a stochastic parrot, which can give answers, but does not really understand. And also another problem is common sense reasoning. For example, Vinograd schemas, which are in fact replace of the Turing test of artificial intelligence. Also in this direction, it is a lot of research, but still is not perfect. Bias, it's a problem which, for example, appeared also about 10 years ago or so, and word-to-vec approach, it was introduced by Google, which the idea is, as I said, to transform words and vectors. And in fact, you even can compute, considering that vectors which are close in the space are semantically close also, to have such a computation. For example, ask Paris, France, Tokyo, what? X. And X is Japan. It's correct. But, for example, it was computed father, doctor, mother, nurse. Of course, it's totally unethical. Or man, computer programmer, and woman, homemaker. So these, of course, are problems, and it's also a problem when we have applications for hiring programmers and so on. I will not discuss more because it was discussed about bias in the previous presentations. I will discuss a little more on hallucinations. What are hallucinations? Many times, so not always, but there are situations and not a few times when ChatGPT and other systems give totally wrong, unfaithful and nonsensical answers. Even if they seem fluent and natural, they seem neutral and fluent because, as I said, it is a probabilistic generation of answer, which due to the huge number of text learned, it has kind of coherence and naturalness, but sometimes it's totally wrong. And there are several cases. Sometimes even if there is a source, a correct source, it generates wrong answer. So this is a big problem, and it's a big problem also from ethical point of view, because it can generate something totally unethical, but also for trust. You do not trust in a human who hallucinates. And of course, it's a lot of research now for eliminating hallucinations. And there are different opinions. Of course, OpenAI said, for example, 1 year ago that, okay, we'll solve this. But Jan LeCun, which is a famous, well-known researcher in the domain, which got also Turing Prize, said we are not, so we'll see. And as I said, also the GPT technical report mentioned that there are such problems. One approach, I said that there are many researches for analyzing what causes hallucinations, how can be solved or eliminated or reduced. One approach is using so-called prompt engineering. That means having some way of not only put a simple question, but put some more complex question or a series of questions. You have here some definitions. So this is a way of trying to solve this problem. And there are also some other ways of trying to bring ethics and trust. For example, one is a so-called fine-tuning. Fine-tuning is an approach, a method which is used in many cases in artificial intelligence using neural networks. That means a neural network which was also trained. You trained further for some specific cases, a specific domain, because for example, ChatGPT or others, BERT and so on, are general purpose developed systems. And if you want to train them for a specific domain, you can train with some further examples. For example, for ethical problems and so on. Another issue, another approach is to filter the answers, as I said, using some symbolic artificial intelligence, for example, knowledge graphs, rules, and so on. And there is important work also in this domain. But also prompt engineering has problems, because as you see here in a code, it can perpetuate stereotypes, spread misinformation, amplify biases. And in fact, prompt engineering needs also some skill from the users. In fact, major companies, for example, Anthropic, who developed Claude, employ, and there is a new job called prompt engineer. And these are not only computer engineer, but also, for example, linguists, people with humanistic background who can put questions in a very sophisticated way. Also, another problem is, as I said, there are filters for filtering several questions. For example, ethical, or even somebody can ask how to make a bomb. Yes, or how can I kill somebody? And of course, but there are filters. There are rules which, if you put such a question, probably you'll say, I do not answer to such question. But there is the so-called jailbreaking, and it's, if you look on the web, you'll see a lot of work. Of course, this is probably not funded by. There are bad people who try to bypass such filters, and this is called jailbreaking, to get some answers to these questions which are totally bad and wrong, and can make a lot of harm. And in fact, I just asked today ChatGPT 4.0, it's one of the most performant alternative versions of ChatGPT, about how works jailbreaking and how, for example, how can be rule-based constraints broke, or another problem is the complexity of natural language. Natural language, it's still, even if such systems are working very well, it still has some complexities which are not yet handled. Ambiguities also, role playing. There are several, you see, not only one way. And develops, you see, they should systems add new rules with ChatGPT and other systems. And I still use that, as I told you, reinforced learning human feedback, which was used by ChatGPT to tailor the functioning of system of the ChatGPT, and also limit the responses. So there is a big problem. So to conclude, requirements for a trustworthy natural language processing, of course, first of all, hallucinations should not appear in order that such systems are reliable. Here it's an approach which in fact is related to what one of my main research directions. I introduced the so-called polyphonic model of conversations and discourse analysis, which is based on the dialogic theory of Mikhail Bakhtin. And the idea is to have a dialogue in general, which has this answerability and accountability dimensions, and analyze such interactions dimension. But of course, ethics and explainability. I already said about explanatory. A few words. I'm not to speak more than my allocated time. It was discussed before, and other problems. I said about stochastic parrots. It's in fact this system do not have a real understanding inferencing, and in fact it is a problem of consciousness, which is very delicate and debate in general in psychology, philosophy, artificial intelligence. Some people said, okay, we have artificial intelligence with consciousness. Others says no. It is a very, very, very delicate subject. Consciousness also in the sense of having this sense of good and bad, which of course having some stochastic statistic parrots, it's not easy to implement. As I said, common sense reasoning and explain. So as final conclusions, we have to answer to questions. What are the possibilities to implement, and not only natural language processing, but robots for the autonomous cars, agents, and so on, which are ethical and trustful. Yes. And another is which is a discussion, which are the ethical implications of using artificial intelligence. Here also, natural language processing, you know the discussion about plagiarism, but people saying that ChatGPT in fact does plagiarism. It's a lot of discussion in it. In fact, it's a discussion which was in artificial intelligence even from the beginnings. The problem of hard or artificial general intelligence versus weak artificial intelligence. It is a debate. Some people said, okay, we already have general artificial intelligence by ChatGPT. Others are not so sure. Even well-known researchers and even this year there were laureates of Nobel Prize, which in fact are persons, researchers, and famous people in artificial intelligence. Some of them are little skeptic. But what is a good news is that artificial intelligence can also be used for detecting violations of ethics, for detecting fake news, deep fake news, bullying, and so on. Okay, thank you. And of course, if you have questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you very much for interesting presentation. Unfortunately, we're out of time, so maybe we can have some questions during the discussion and session. But right now, I would like to introduce our next speaker, who is Natalia. She is science officer and basically has more than 10 years experience in scientific project management. Please, floor is yours.
Thank you so much for having me. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much for organizing this webinar. Thank you for having me. My name is Natalia Glowacka and I work for the European Science Foundation based in Strasbourg, France. And I am a member of the team responsible for the implementation of the Ethics and Gender Equality Framework in the ENFIELD project. And today I will tell you in more detail how the framework is being implemented. So here are the key topics of today's presentation. So how ethics and gender are considered in Horizon Europe program, why ethics and gender equality are important in the context of AI, what are the key principles of the inclusive ethics and gender equality framework, the main objectives of the ethics framework and gender equality framework, and the key actions of the framework implementation and conclusion. So how ethics and gender is considered in the Horizon Europe program. Horizon Europe integrates ethics and gender equality as key principles across its research and innovation funding. Ethical considerations are addressed through mandatory ethics reviews, ensuring compliance with human rights, privacy and safety standards and regulations. And regarding gender, Horizon Europe goes beyond and seeks not only for achieving of the gender balance in research teams, but also to foster gender equality and create an environment that supports also diverse groups in contributing to the research and to benefiting from the research. So how ethics is considered in the Horizon Europe? Ethics has to be integrated through all research stages of the project to uphold high ethical standards and fundamental rights. Then we have ethical review and compliance, which is required for projects involving human participants, animals, and sensitive data. So we have to remember that research has to be done in line with the existing EU laws, in line with the General Data Protection Regulation, or in line with the laws on human rights. Then we have ethics self-assessment, which is very important here. So researchers must assess potential ethical issues arising from their research and their projects, for example, environmental impact. Then we have ongoing oversight and guidance. So sometimes it is necessary to have the external ethics review, or the ethics commission has to be established for the certain projects. And ethical leadership in innovation. So ethical principles in the technologies which are using AI or biotech. Gender in Horizon Europe and how it is considered. So there are three main action lines in which gender equality is addressed in Horizon Europe program, as it is referred in the Gender Equality in Research and Innovation Strategy. So the first of all, we have the Gender Equality Plan, which is required for all public bodies, universities and research organizations participating in the Horizon Europe program. Then we have gender balance, so targeting of 50% of women in the research and innovation, focusing on boards, expert groups, evaluation committees and research teams. And the last point here is the gender dimension integration, so incorporating gender perspectives into research and innovation activities and projects. Why ethics and gender equality are important in the context of AI? So ethics in AI is important because it ensures fairness and avoids bias. So AI systems must be designed in a way to avoid reinforcing societal biases, ensuring decisions are fair and inclusive. It also ensures transparency. So ethical AI requires that systems are explainable, so people can understand clearly how decisions are made and how algorithms are working, and in case if it is necessary to hold organizations accountable. Ethics also ensures privacy and data protection. Since AI often works on personal data, we have to make sure that research is done in line with the GDPR requirements set by the European Commission. Then it can avoid harm and ensure safety. So AI must be strictly tested to avoid harm, particularly in the fields like healthcare or hiring or finances, as it was already mentioned in the presentations before, and building trust, which is a very important element here, since ethical principles help build public trust in AI, because we know that society has got still a lot of issues and concerns, which is understandable. So it can make people more comfortable even to use technologies involving AI and also applications involving AI. So here we have a very important question: how we can then ensure that our research is conducted in an ethical and trustworthy manner. So first, we should start with the literature review already before we'll start our research or the project. So we should reach to ethical guidelines, so follow ethical standards such as key documents, declarations, which were already developed, for example, Declaration of Helsinki, or other guidances developed by UNESCO, as it was already mentioned today, or European Commission. And if necessary, to seek for approval from ethics committees and advisors. Then to provide ethical training to our team in order to understand ethical research practices and to navigate potential dilemmas which can arise from the research. Then we should ensure data integrity, so collect and analyze data transparently and keep proper documentation and keep proper record of this documentation. Then maintain confidentiality, so to ensure participants' privacy by keeping data confidential and securely stored, also in line with the GDPR requirements. Then monitor for bias, so identify and disclose any potential conflicts of interest which can arise. Then very important element here is to encourage open communication within your team. So to foster a culture where team members can raise ethical concerns if they have the concerns which can also appear during the project implementation, and if necessary, regular ethical review, so to monitor the project and adjust as it is needed, because it can change during the project implementation. European Commission developed ethics guidelines for trustworthy AI. It was already mentioned today also during the presentation, so I will not go into the details. Just to remind you that the main elements highlighted in the recommendations are that AI should support human goals, enhance human agency and rights, and contribute to a healthy society. AI should prevent harm and be reliable and include safe mechanisms to ensure smooth operation if the systems will fail. And AI systems should maintain people's data privacy as well as the privacy of the models. Since we are working with the human data, it is very important to follow these principles. AI systems must promote inclusion, diversity, and equity, also while minimizing bias to support human rights. So the goal is to create equal environments for the people to create for them the equal opportunities. Then AI should not cause societal unrest and job insecurity. As we all know, it is the main concern of the society. And there must be also a clear responsibility for an AI system through its life cycle. Why gender equality is important in AI? So we were already talking today about the bias mitigation. So gender bias in AI reinforces societal inequalities, leading to discriminatory outcomes in areas like hiring, for example, as it was discussed today in the presentation by Christof. So mitigating this bias is essential for ensuring that AI systems are fair for all users. Then gender equality ensures also responsible AI design, avoiding harmful stereotypes. Gender diverse teams foster creativity and breakthrough solutions for broader challenges, and public trust, which is again a very important element here. So inclusive AI builds trust by reflecting diverse perspectives and needs. Here we have the key principles of the ENFIELD Inclusive Ethics and Gender Equality Framework. So in the frame of the framework, we are aiming for inclusion, which is reflected in the project's collaborative co-creative processes, respecting diversity and ensuring no tolerance for discrimination or harassment. Then we are aiming for gender equality, so gender balance and mainstreaming integrated across the whole project and research activities. And ethics, so ethical conduct and research integrity in project implementation. And the framework is being implemented till the end of the project. Here we can see the main action lines of the framework. So first of all, we started with the definition of the nature, scale and scope of the analysis. So where and why action is taken and what type of action. Then we identify drivers of change, so with whom the engagement is needed, because it can also change as the project progresses. Then we have identifying anticipated outcomes, so in the form of the key performance indicators, checklists, documents, and other process mechanisms. And then we have examining, so impacts and reassessing the actions, actors, and mechanisms if it is needed. Main objectives of the ethics framework. The main idea of the framework is to provide a comprehensive understanding and knowledge of ethical considerations in the EU-funded project, to explain to project partners the importance of ethics, integrity, and the responsibilities which were signed in the project grant agreement and should be followed, and to equip the project partners with the necessary knowledge, so in a way so they can integrate ethics into their research activities already by themselves. And in case if any questions will arise, we are ready to support them. In case of the gender equality framework, also to provide a complete understanding of the gender considerations in the project, to present a way to systematize information about gender differences across different domains of the project, also explain the responsibilities the partners have with the gender integrity into their tasks, and to navigate and guide the partners how to incorporate gender equality framework into their tasks and support the partners in case if such support will be needed. The key actions of the framework implementation are to monitor compliance with adopted ethical standards and procedures and provide also support and assistance in order to meet Horizon Europe requirements, to set the framework and monitor gender dimension based on the developed key performance indicators, to co-create guidelines and documents with the work package task leaders and also other stakeholders to ensure that the best practices are shared within the project consortium, and to review communication and dissemination activities to ensure diversity, inclusivity, and prevention of stereotypes. What is our strategy in order to implement the ethics and gender framework? So we are providing the tailor-made assistance in different ways. So we are organizing bilateral meetings with the project partners in order to explain them the integration of the ethics and gender framework to understand their needs and expectations. Then we are developing guidelines and guidance documents about specific topics, and some of them are developed on demand of the partners if the needs will appear. And then we provide particular advice about specific questions and issues that can appear during the implementation of the project, and if some questions will arise from the study. Then regarding the methodology of the framework, in case of the gender framework, we have two parts of the implementation, the general part and specific part. In the general part, we have the collection of the gender disaggregated data, so the data collection based on the key performance indicators developed. Then we are aiming for 50% of women in research and innovation. And we are encouraging partners to apply gender-sensitive language in all project communication based on the communication guidelines we developed. And regarding the specific part, we have here the contextualization, which focuses on project-specific characteristics, then discussion, which defines the gender and inclusivity scope. Then we have data gathering based on the specified and developed KPIs, technical support which shares best practices and consultancy, and reflexivity. So this ensures ongoing progress and the fine-tuning of the key performance indicators. In case of the ethics framework, we have a continuous self-assessment, also guided self-assessment based on the produced guidelines for the partners, and if there is a need from the project, also external ethics advice if it is necessary. Regarding the tools, in case of the gender framework, we developed the inclusive communication guidelines and checklists covering social media posts, workshops, external meetings, stakeholder engagement meetings. Also, guidance document on diversity and gender dimension in research content. Also, we developed a repository for both gender equality and ethics, which is a living document which is constantly updated as the project progresses, and key performance indicators developed also together with the data collection. And we are supporting partners with the implementation in the form of the bilateral meetings. And in case of the ethics framework, we develop self-assessment guidelines. We are developing self-assessment guidelines in this moment for each EI pillar of the ENFIELD project. We developed the repository on gender equality and ethics, as I mentioned, and guidelines about specific topics designed on the demand of the partners, because as I said, the framework will be implemented till the end of the project, so maybe a new need for new guidelines will appear. And also we are supporting partners in the frame of the bilateral meetings with them to understand their needs and concerns. To sum up everything, we have to be aware that our research has the ethical responsibility. So research must be developed with fairness, transparency and accountability, and should address gender biases to ensure equitable outcomes. The research should promote diversity, so gender equality and research development leads to more inclusive, effective and fair technologies across various applications. Then we have long-term impact, so prioritizing ethics and gender equality builds trust and promotes social justice, which is very important in case of the EI applications. And then we have literature. As we know, the field with EI is still an emerging one, but we observe an expanding literature which is appearing on research ethics and gender, and we can find a lot of essential frameworks and best practices already developed by European Commission, UNESCO or OECD, which we can use for our projects. And here, for example, you will be able to access some documents to study on the ethics involved with artificial intelligence, and in general on ethics in research, and also some articles regarding gender equality with the respective links, so we can access it directly when the presentations will be available. So thank you so much for your attention, and if you have any questions, you can always contact us as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Actually, I have one question. So basically, you said that you try to achieve 50% of women in our project. So how can you do that? Because, for example, in our research group, there's no percentage of women who are involved in basically high level. It's not so high.
Yes, we know that there are still some fields where it is a challenge to achieve 50% of women in overall. So in the frame of the framework implementation, we are encouraging the partners, for example, in case when they are organizing the meetings or the webinars or conferences, we are encouraging them to show the efforts, that they made some efforts in order to achieve this balance. For example, to place a sentence on the program that women in particular are encouraged to participate in this particular webinar, for example, or conference or external event. So, for example, in case when it is really a challenge to achieve that, so then we would like to, in the frame of this framework and further reporting, would like to show that the effort was made to achieve that.
Thank you for your answer. And now I'm giving floor to Adina.
Okay. First of all, I would like to thank Christina and Nicola also for the excellent way in which they moderated our session. I'm going to start with 2 or maybe 3 questions that I wanted to ask, and sorry for me starting, but first of all, I'm going to start with a question that I wanted to ask Professor Trăușan-Matu. And then, of course, everybody can intervene and comment and ask questions. And then with 1 or 2 questions to Natalia. So, Ștefan, thank you very much for joining our webinar. I would like to ask you the following thing. In the presentation of Professor Phillip Morgan, he said, and very correctly, that we have to build user trust in AI system. Moreover, to keep them with trusting the system and using the system, the AI system, I refer. In the same time, as you very well highlighted in your presentation, currently, especially large language models such as GPT and the others are showing hallucinations. And because they are very near every user, the user tend to use them and to overtrust them, even in case they should not trust the answers. So my question is, how can we as AI scientists address the user in such a way as achieve a balance among this dichotomy of not trusting because it is AI and trusting too much, including hallucination? And I ask you, Ștefan, but I see that Phillip is also with us, so he can also answer if it is okay.
Okay, thank you for the question. It's a very good question. As I said, there is this problem of hallucinations, and there are a lot of there is a lot of research, many papers, groups trying to overcome this problem, and there are some approaches. First of all, even ChatGPT, from after several months after the launch, they added some comments that their answers might be not trustful. So it is so. Of course, we are aware, and it is a big problem because it was a lot of enthusiasm, and it still is. But when several problems appear, for example, like in autonomous cars, there were some problems. People might lose trust, and might be maybe not. It was many years ago, winters of artificial intelligence, but there might be some problems. So it is our duty as a specialist in artificial intelligence to make people aware of course, the benefits is the it's a great progress and a lot of advantages, but also about this problem, to do not be over enthusiastic and to be rational, and so we have this duty. But of course, it's difficult because I see here in our news, TV, and so on, that there are some exaggerations. And of course, our duty is also to develop ways and to be aware and detect problems and correct them. So it's maybe also an education. It's also in maybe from schools, but also in general education, also of people in media. Or but you know, they always try to find some which is something very extraordinary, special, and exaggerate sometimes. So yes, I hope I answered to your question.
Would it be okay for me to add to that, Adina? Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Stefan. That's really, really interesting. I'm a firm believer, as a psychologist, a human factor specialist, that even with the best AI in the world, we can't remove the human from the loop. We have to be able to interrogate these systems. So, for example, even when an AI system is introduced, whether that's an AI smart agent or whatever it is, having that system in place 100% of the time where there's no human that you can interact with to be able to check or verify things is very, very dangerous. We've been running some experiments recently where participants are given choice over using an AI agent versus a human agent in a very kind of complex cybersecurity battle space management task. I won't go into all the details. It would take a long time. And what we're tending to find at the moment is when given the choice, human users will take the human advice, not the AI advice. They'll take the human advice over the AI advice, even when the AI is 100% correct. And what tends to happen is with participants in some of our experiments, and this is quite a robust finding, is when they do take the AI advice and they start relying on it, and then during the course of an experiment, they stop using the AI or they don't use it as much. Their performance on the task is actually worse from having used the AI advisor than it is compared to when they relied on the human advisor. So there are already so many downsides in relation to this. And then when you interrogate and ask people, you know, why did you get these kind of results? Why did you get these kind of findings? And, you know, they simply say, relating to the theme of this workshop, well, I don't fully trust the AI system. There could be something going on in the background. But then maybe having the opportunity to interrogate it, to be able to have an human linked into that system would be beneficial. And using Stefan's example of autonomous vehicles, we do a lot of work on the design and development of dashboards for autonomous vehicles. People don't like at the moment AI informational assistance in autonomous vehicles. They don't like robot agents, social robots, weak robots. They like having a human touch, communicating with them to let them know what's happening, what's going wrong, and why. So yeah, going back to the original point I made, and I know lots of people, not necessarily in this forum, they don't want to hear this. We can't take the human out of the loop. It's too dangerous. There has to be a human controller, maybe, you know, in a networking system, whatever it is, that you can just check things with and verify. It's a bit like when somebody sends you a social media request. Like, I'm very reluctant to click on a social media request if I don't know that person. You want to check and verify that it's actually a person before you do that. And I think the same kind of thing applies to AI. You want to check that what it's producing is real. We could then go into deep fakes, but that's a much longer conversation. So you're interacting with a human and it's actually a deep fake human. And yeah, I'll stop there.
Adina, you are muted.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
You are still muted.
I have two questions for you. So from the point of view of ethics and trust related to a project, from my point of view, I think I see two different aspects. The first one is related to the project development. That means how you achieve data integrity, confidentiality, equal participation of men and women as much as it is possible. Ethics of research, that means related to IPR and so on. So this is regarding, let's say, how the project is developed and carried on. And the other part is the ethics of the research itself, which relates to everything we have, almost everything that we have discussed until now, related to trustworthy, ethical aspect of AI systems, and so on. So my question is, the framework to be developed, to me, it seems it covers elements of both views or both approaches, or maybe I'm not sure. So my question is, to which side the framework will be oriented, or mainly focused, or on both? Yes? I hope I explained clear the question. If not, I can rephrase it.
It's a question to me, right? Because I didn't hear the beginning of the question. So, so as I explained in the presentation, so we had the first part of the framework development where we had the bilateral meetings with the partners. We developed the documents, the guidance documents to guide the partners how to integrate ethics and gender into their activities. And then we had the framework of validation based on the needs from the partners, and then we'll have the data collection, and then we'll, in the further part of the project, we'll be developing guidances, as I mentioned also in the presentation, involved with the pillars of the project. So as you mentioned, it will be more directed to the typical research activities. So as you say, we can distinguish these two parts, but we'll be able to provide the further documentation, and as I said, because it will be implemented till the end of the project. So so yes, we can distinguish it in such a way as you mentioned.
Okay, thank you. And the second question also for you. Phil mentioned in the presentation, especially in the AI for CI hub, that implication of users is very important in order to, and evaluation with users is very important in order to achieve trust in AI systems. So my question was, do you intend to do some evaluations or some questionnaires or some experiments with users for the frameworks you are developing or not?
Actually, I think it will be done in the frame of the data collection, because we'll have the data collections among but you mean users from the ENFIELD project only, the participants?
No, I'm not talking about the participants. The participants are the one developing AI products or prototypes. I'm talking about the user of what we are doing.
Yeah, that is also a very important aspect. So far, we did not consider that, but I think it is an important point you are raising also to consider that, yes, for our work.
Okay, Phil inspired me with the hub. With his hub.
Yeah, I think we're very lucky with the AI for CI hub that we'd factored in about 6 months of resource to run these participatory workshops. So yeah, they're sort of funded activities, and we'll be, like, for example, in the environmental intelligence theme that we're working on, we'll be having individual focus groups with, for example, Met Office experts, but also with local community groups, gardening groups, farmers groups, etc. So right the way from, you know, sort of citizens who are going about their everyday lives and doing their business, right the way up to the people who are, you know, developing the big AI systems for weather management and so on. And then once we've had the focus groups, we're going to get a lot of people together doing 1- and 2-day participatory workshops and have them, they're going to take themselves through journeys of interacting with smart agents and what they would like and what they wouldn't like and what their fears are and what, you know, all these kind of things relating to accessibility, usability, functionality, whether they wanted to be adaptive, so that we're designing with them in mind. But yeah, we were lucky in the sense that it's a 5-year project, and we could factor in about sort of 6 months activity to do that across our different themes. It's not just environmental intelligence. We're doing it in smart cities, financial technology, etc.
Okay. Now, let's say that I'm almost done with my questions, but because this is a discussion and question and answer session, I don't want to monopolize. So please, I'm asking the audience about questions or observations or whatever. Please raise your hand. And yes, Phil, please.
Or you could probably tell that I like to talk. It's an upside at times, but also a downside. I just emphasizing again, I know I mentioned it at the end of my presentation, but our AI for CI hub, we are very much looking to exchange and collaborate with others as well. I think the ENFIELD project sounds brilliant. It's fantastic. It's definitely a project that we would like to learn more about, and we'd like to let you know more about AI for CI. So if there is a way of connecting, even if we don't get the AI for CI global funding, which I think we will, I'm very, very confident, but even if we don't get that, we'd love to find ways to connect. So I popped my email address in the chat earlier on. I'll do it again if anybody would like to connect. When I said earlier on, I don't tend to accept social media requests via LinkedIn unless I know the people. I've made a note of all the names in this workshop. So if I receive a LinkedIn request from people in the workshop, I promise I'll accept it and I'll get back to you as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you very much. Other questions or observations, please? Yes, Tanya, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so I did use the email address that Philip left, but I will now pose a question here because probably all of you are eligible to answer that. I'm interested if there is a possibility of including a partner as an associate partner to the project. So after the project has started, without any funding, just an associate partner that would contribute to the project or benefit from the outside outcomes from the project in terms of research, especially because they come from a research institution, Ștefan Institute from Ljubljana. So that is a question that I would have, an express interest for collaboration, of course.
Tanya, thank you for the question, but unfortunately, I am not in the position to answer. You should ask Pankaj or Georgios. They were with us during almost all the seminar, but now I see that they left.
Is there a possibility to get their contact?
Sorry?
Any possibility to get their contact, like email address or?
Yes, of course. Somebody from the team who knows Pankaj emailed. Nicola, please, to send it on chat if you can. Thank you. So Pankaj, if you were from the beginning, Pankaj presented the project. He is a project manager, so
yes,
I think
yes, I was.
He was the best to contact and to ask. I don't know about. I think theoretically this would be possible, but he is the one to know. You know.
Great, thanks. I will make the effort to find the contact. Thank you.
But I think that it is now on the chat.
Okay. Okay, perfect.
Yes, it's an email. It is on the chat now.
Great. Thank you for the great event as well and all the talks. I enjoyed it really.
Okay, thank you also for your appreciation. Other questions or discussions? I have a question, an organizational question. We would like to, if possible, to put the slides that you have presented on the web. Of course, we must have the approval of the speakers. I'm going to ask each speaker individually, but if there are some speakers now, of course, they can tell me now if they do agree. Now for Phillip, I know that you said us some things that are private. As you may have noticed, we have stopped the recording during your presentation. However, maybe from your slides, you can remove the confidential part and leave the unconfidential part and send us the slides, of course, if you agree, to put on the website. As regarding the recordings of the webinar, they will be available only to the member of the ENFIELD consortium. Of course, the webinar was open to everybody, but the recordings will be available only to the members of the consortium, the ENFIELD consortium. They will not be made public. Okay, but I'm going to send an email to all presenters and ask to send me individually, of course, if they agree to put their presentation on the web page of our webinar. Okay, so well, I thank you very much for this great webinar. I thank all the speakers very much. I thank also the moderators, Nicola Sulie and Cristina Vasilieva, and I strongly hope that we can meet again, because as I announced in the beginning, during next year, we are all going to organize a second webinar in the ENFIELD project dedicated to bias in research and explainability. So it would be great if you could participate in that webinar too, but of course this will be done in due time. Thank you very much, and have a very nice weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Take care. Look forward to
Thank
seeing you.
you.
Bye.
Have a nice.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very
Bye.
much. Bye.
Bye.
Have a nice weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.